So I recently had a brief conversation on Twitter with Ben Davison, who is the new trainer of Tyson Fury. And it was a cordial conversation, no beef or nothing like that. Biggest respect to Ben. But it got me thinking about a question which I'm often asked, and that is what makes a good boxing trainer? And another question, which is, are there certain fighters who don't actually need a trainer? And I touched on this briefly in a recent video when I was talking about Floyd Mayweather. Now, in terms of what makes a good trainer, I often say that there is no one size fits all method to training fighters. And what I mean by that is different trainers teach different things. Different trainers teach different techniques. You look at Cus D'Amato, he had a very specific technique that he would teach all his fighters. But that technique, that style, is not going to suit everybody. It suited Mike Tyson, it suited Floyd Patterson, it suited Jose Torres, but would that Cus D'Amato style suit Deontay Wilder? Hell no. Because Cus D'Amato's style would not take advantage of Deontay Wilder's long arms, his tall height, etc. So that style's not suitable for him. So Cus D'Amato wouldn't have been the right trainer, probably, for somebody like a Deontay Wilder. And you can give examples of other fighters, similar situation. You look at the David Haye style, right? The typical Adam Booth style, the David Haye style, which was kind of an offshoot of the Roy Jones Jr. style. Could you teach Mike Tyson to fight like David Haye, the Adam Booth style? I mean, you could teach him to fight like that, but he wouldn't be very effective fighting like that. That style wouldn't utilize Mike Tyson's attributes to their best potential, would it? That's more for a guy who's a bit taller, a bit rangier, longer arms, etc. Not for a short, stumpy, stocky guy like Tyson. So, for any fighter, you have to pick a trainer who has a track record of being able to effectively teach a style to fighters with your particular physical dimensions and your type of abilities, your type of physical attributes. Yeah? That's what you need to look for. Rather than just saying, okay, this trainer's a well-known guy, I'm going to go to him. But his style might not be right for you. You see? So, a good trainer is somebody who knows which fighters to work with, for one. Not a trainer who's going to try and take fighters whose style is not really suited to his method of training, because he's not going to have success that way. Now, some trainers, they are good with a variety of different styles. You know, they can take a fighter and not really try and mold him into a particular style, but just look at his attributes and enhance his attributes. Some trainers have the ability to do that. Yeah. But I would say those trainers are relatively few and far between. Most trainers have a specific type of style and certain training methods. It's not even just the style, it's also the training methods that certain trainers have. Not all the training methods are going to suit every fighter. Not every fighter's body is going to respond to the particular training methods in the same way. Some of them are going to respond positively to certain training methods, and other fighters' bodies are going to respond more negatively to those training methods. You see? So again, there really is no one size fits all method to training a fighter. The trainer needs to know what the fighter is good at and what the fighter's attributes are, and he also needs to know what his own attributes are as a trainer And when you get a good match between fighter and trainer, that's normally when you get the best out of the fighter. You see? So that's what makes a good trainer, is somebody who can get the best out of the fighter, who understands how best to utilize the fighter's natural attributes, yeah, and make the most out of them. And that's just from a technical aspect. That's just from a physical aspect. There's also the mental aspect, because a good trainer needs to understand the psychology of his fighter, because boxing is so much mental. Some people like to say it's 80% or 70% mental and 30% physical. Regardless of what percentage is accurate, the mental aspect of boxing is extremely important, because it's a very mentally taxing and emotionally taxing sport. There's so much pressure on the fighters, and different fighters respond differently to pressure. Different fighters respond to different stimuli, mental and emotional stimuli, in different ways. So this is another thing. You have to find compatibility between the trainer and the fighter from a mental point of view. That can be just as important as the knowledge the trainer has, is whether they can connect with the fighter mentally and emotionally, especially if it's going to be a long-term partnership, you see. So these are all the things. And so basically, yeah, what makes a good trainer is when a trainer can know what a fighter's physical attributes are and make the most out of them. And also when he can know how to connect with a fighter mentally and understand that not all fighters respond the same to the same mental stimuli and emotional stimuli, etc. So this is what makes a good trainer. And as far as, do all fighters need a trainer? I would say 99.9% of them do. But fighters don't all need the same amount of attention from a trainer. They don't all need the same amount of input from a trainer. Some fighters can work things out for themselves more so than others. Excuse me. And that includes what I just talked about with regards to making the most out of your own physical attributes, knowing yourself, knowing what your best attributes are and how to make the most out of them. This comes naturally to a lot of fighters, whereas other guys, it doesn't come so naturally. And sometimes it's by random chance. Other times it's more intuitive and instinctive. I'll give you a couple of examples. Anthony Joshua, when he first stepped into a boxing gym, he was a Mike Tyson fan. Anthony Joshua was 6'6". He was in the boxing gym at Finchley. I think that was the first boxing gym he went to. And he was trying to fight like Mike Tyson. He was on the bag and he was doing all his shadow boxing and all that kind of stuff, trying to fight like Tyson. And the trainers got hold of him and they said, Anthony, you're 6'6". What are you doing? Fighting like Tyson, crouching down and doing all this kind of stuff. You are negating your natural physical gifts, your height, your reach. That's what you need to be using. Fighting like Tyson makes it easier for shorter guys to hit you. It don't make any sense. So that was a case where Anthony Joshua didn't understand his own physical attributes and how to use them most effectively. He had to be taught that by trainers. But then on the other hand, you get a situation like you did with Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, from a young age, he was watching people like Sugar Ray Robinson fight. And Ali admitted that he actually patterned his style on Sugar Ray Robinson. And you can see that in Ali's style. But that style suited Ali. It suited his physical attributes. So when he went in the gym, when he first turned over actually as a pro and Angelo Dundee saw him down in Dundee's gym in Miami, Ali was moving around with his hands down and he was, very light on his feet for a big man. And Angelo Dundee said, you know what, I didn't try and change him. I tweaked a few things here and there, but I really didn't try and change him. because the style that he came in the gym with was really a style that suited his physical attributes. He was a naturally fleet-footed and athletic guy, and I let him run with that because at the time heavyweights weren't boxing like Ali. But Dundee saw that this suited him, this particular style that he came in with. So he let him run with it, and that was the right thing to do. So that was a case where Ali understood the best way to use his physical attributes, and perhaps it was intuitive, or perhaps it was because of Sugar Ray Robinson, you know. So yeah, some fighters are more in tune with themselves. They understand themselves. They understand what style suits them best. And some fighters also don't need so much direction when they're in the ring. Some fighters are very good at working things out and figuring things out for themselves. Ali, again, was a guy like that. In the Rumble in the Jungle, when Ali fought George Foreman, Angelo Dundee and Bundy Brown and the people in his corner were telling him to get off the ropes against George Foreman. And Ali was like, shut up, I know what I'm doing. And them guys were like, nah, Foreman's a killer and he's going to do this and that, and you have to get off the ropes, you have to move. And Ali was like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. And he did know what he was doing. Now, he took a hell of a lot of punishment carrying out that game plan, but it turned out to be one of the most famous game plans of all time. You know, the rope-a-dope tactics. He coined the phrase rope-a-dope. And yeah, that was an example of him going against his corner's wishes, but actually doing a good job. Because he got George Foreman to punch himself out. If he kept moving around, Foreman might not have punched himself out, you know, as quickly anyway. So that's an example. Floyd Mayweather, as I mentioned in a previous video, he's somebody who, in most of his fights, you don't really see his uncle Roger or his dad, Floyd Sr., saying much to him in the corner. And when they do say something, it's very minimal. So Floyd's doing his own thing. But to be fair, as I mentioned previously, the time when you really need a trainer is when things are going wrong in the ring rather than when things are going right. And because in most Floyd Mayweather fights, very little ever goes wrong for him, maybe you can say he don't really need his trainer at in those instances and in them situations. Whereas another fighter who's very, very smart, in a similar way to Mayweather, Andre Ward, when he was dropped by Sergey Kovalev in the second round of their first fight, Virgil Hunter, his trainer, did a very good job at getting Andre Ward back on track mentally, you know, getting his confidence where it should be, getting his focus back. It's in crisis moments that people need trainers the most. Right, but some fighters are so robotic, if you want, mentally. They can't really think and do things on the fly. They need to be programmed. You see, they're not as instinctive as other fighters, as like maybe a Mayweather or an Ali. They're not as instinctive as that. They need a trainer to be with them, telling them what to do every single step of the way. Because some of them have been almost like lapdogs of their trainers from when they were amateurs. And that's how they learn the game. You know, they learn the game just by listening, and they're not really the rebellious types in the gym. They're the ones who listen and they do exactly what their trainers tell them. And when things are not going right, and they don't have the right guy in the corner, even when things are going right, if they don't have the right guy in the corner, things can start to go wrong. You know, they can go out there and, you know, be in a routine fight, but if they don't have their regular trainer in the corner, all of a sudden things go wrong. They don't have that familiarity. They don't have that reassuring voice in the corner. You know, some fighters can become emotionally and mentally attached to having particular trainers in the corner, as if that trainer's got them on remote control, you know. But what I noticed is the great fighters, the truly great fighters, tend to be a bit more intuitive, and they don't need so much input from trainers. Yeah, they still need a trainer, but they don't need as much input. The trainer's not parenting them so much, you know? So, yeah, I would say that the vast majority of fighters do need a trainer. Um, and it's not just the mental aspect of it. It's not just teaching a technique. Because again, some fighters, they understand themselves. They understand what kind of technique they need to use. They understand strategy in the ring, sometimes even better than their own trainers do. They understand what to do better. There's also the physical side of it in terms of conditioning, but these days they've got strength and conditioning coaches, so a trainer getting a fighter in shape, I mean, that don't mean that you know boxing, because they got strength and conditioning coaches who know nothing about boxing. They can get fighters in shape. Uh, but, and again, some fighters are actually self-motivated when it comes to getting in shape. Some fighters are gym rats, they love it. Frank Bruno's a good example. Frank Bruno, even today, is in shape. How old is Bruno? He's like 50 something years old. Bruno's still got a six pack. That guy's in shape. This is somebody who no trainer was ever going to have a problem getting in shape in the gym, because the guy loves the gym. And there are, many fighters like that who are absolute gym addicts. Yeah. But other fighters, they need a lot of motivation. They put a lot of weight on in between fights. So trainers are needed for various different reasons. It's not one reason. They're needed for various different reasons. And if it's a good trainer, he's invaluable. But as I say, different fighters need more input than others. That's how I'd answer those questions. Very long-winded, but hopefully you guys got something from it. So drop your comments in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel. There was somebody else I was going to mention in terms of training. Oh yeah, nearly forgot. When I was talking about one-size-fits-all training methods, Michael Grant was a heavyweight contender from the 90s who famously fought Lennox Lewis and got blown out in 2 rounds. Michael Grant was actually managed by Bill Cayton, who was Mike Tyson's former manager, right? I can't remember who trained Michael Grant. Was it Teddy Atlas? I think it might have been Teddy Atlas. I can't remember who trained him now. I think it might have been Teddy Atlas for a certain period in his career. I'm sure it was actually. So he was trained by Atlas for a certain period of his career and managed by Bill Cayton, right? And Atlas used to train Tyson and Cayton used to manage Tyson. And I remember reading somewhere in one of them old school boxing publications that Cayton was, Cayton's a manager. So he really doesn't know anything about training fighters. But he had a lot of success with Mike Tyson. So I read somebody criticizing Bill Cayton for trying to get Michael Grant to fight like Mike Tyson. This was apparently Bill Cayton's idea for Michael Grant to get him to fight like Tyson. And the person was saying, like, what's he talking about? Michael Grant is 6'7". How can a guy who's 6'7" fight like Mike Tyson? It's insane. But again, I guess Bill Cayton, not being a trainer, not really understanding that certain styles suit certain fighters. It's not like there's one ultimate style that everybody's supposed to use and it's going to be successful for them. No, you got to find a style that works for you. Sometimes you can base your style upon a certain fighter who has similar physical attributes to you, but you don't want to try and be exactly like him. You want to put your own spin on the style, because you are not a carbon copy of someone else. You do have differences. And ultimately, one thing I hear people say, like, about Broner, right? They say, oh, Broner, he's a Mayweather clone and, he should find his own style and all this kind of business. To be honest with you, I think Adrian Broner was too flat-footed early on in his career. And he got that flat-footedness from copying the older version of Floyd Mayweather. So I think he neglected to use his feet as much as he should have done. But in terms of the shoulder roll, the Philly shell defense, I think that's a good thing for Adrian Broner. Is he as good as Floyd Mayweather with it? Hell no. But if Adrian Broner had a different style, are you trying to tell me he'd be better if he had a different style than the one he has now? I don't think so. I think Adrian Broner has found his level, and regardless of what style you taught him, he'd be at that same level or a similar level. I don't think it's going to make a massive difference to Adrian Broner in terms of how good he is as a fighter if you put him with Virgil Hunter, or if you put him with Joe Goosen, or you put him with whatever trainer you can think of. I don't think it's going to make a massive difference to Adrian Broner's success. I think Adrian Broner is who he is, and the Mayweather clone style, I don't think it was a bad style for him. I just don't think he's good enough to have the success that he wanted to have and make billions and all that kind of stuff. I don't think he has the eyes for it. I don't think he has the intelligence for it. You know, I don't think I don't think there's anything you can teach Adrian Broner. I don't think there's anything any trainer can teach him that can get him much above the level that he's been at. You see? So where people want to look at Broner and say, oh, see, that's what you get for trying to rip off Mayweather. He found his level. Like, whether he tried to rip Mayweather off or not, he was never going to get to Mayweather's level or any kind of fighter like that. You know, it kind of reminds me of a fighter from back in the days, another heavyweight contender from the 90s called Larry Donald. And Larry Donald was a Muhammad Ali clone. I mean, when I say he was an Ali clone, I think Larry Donald was from Ohio, right? But he even tried to put on a Louisville accent, you know, a Kentucky accent, and talk like Muhammad Ali, and you know, he did poems like Muhammad Ali and all kind of stuff, fought like everything. He just tried to copy everything from Ali, even tried to have Ali's haircut, everything, even the same shorts as Ali, everything. All right, Larry Donald, he was just the total Ali fanboy who thought that he was the reincarnation of Ali, even though Ali was still alive. Now, Larry Donald, would he have been any better if he hadn't fought in that particular style? Would he have gone on to be a great world champion, one of the best heavyweights of all time, if he hadn't copied Ali's style? No, because the Ali style actually suited Larry Donald. He wasn't anywhere near good enough to be the next Ali, or as good as Lennox Lewis or Riddick Bowe or the guys that are around at the time. He just didn't have it in him to be that good, regardless of who trained him, regardless of what style you taught him. He didn't have it in him. I think the Ali style that he did have took him as far as he was ever going to go. You know? So that's one thing I do think people, they make a mistake by dismissing somebody just because they're trying to emulate the style of another fighter. Yeah, that might be the best way for them. Sometimes it's obviously not. Like when Andre Berto, when he'd been training with Broner and he tried to come in doing the Philly shell against Robert Guerrero. That was the ugliest Philly shell I've ever seen. That didn't suit him. But for some fighters, it does suit the Philly shell, because you got these people out there who, anytime they see somebody with a Philly shell, they're like, oh, he's trying to copy Mayweather. Oh, that's never going to go anywhere. Oh, that's terrible. This is what you hear people saying. But actually, the Philly shell existed long before Mayweather. And there were fighters having success with it long before Mayweather. And so therefore, there are going to be fighters after Mayweather who also have success with it. It's not like only Mayweather's allowed to use that style. It's not like only Mayweather can have success with a Philly shell. There are fighters before who did, and there are fighters after who will. Yeah? The one style which I'll say is extremely difficult to learn, and I've talked about this before, extremely difficult to master, is the Customado style. I think that's probably one of the most difficult styles in boxing for anybody to use. And you have to be extremely disciplined. You have to be taught really by one of the D'Amato disciples like Teddy Atlas or Kevin Rooney. You have to be taught by them. And even then, it's certainly no guarantee of success, because it is such a difficult style to master. And it's such a rigid style. You know, the D'Amato style is really a pressure fighting, front foot style. You know, that's what it is. Front foot counter punching here and there, but predominantly front foot pressure fighting, fast punches, combinations and all that. Slightly square on, moving the head like a pendulum from side to side, the upper body. it's a very rigid style. It's not a style where you can say, okay, get up on your toes, on your back foot, start popping a jab, you know, get a bit more side on. No, they don't teach that. It's a very rigid boxing stance that they teach. Obviously, you're moving your upper body, but I mean, your shape, the shape that they teach in a D'Amato style, there's not much fluidity. You know, you're supposed to stay in that particular shape constantly. You don't really give your opponents many different looks. Whereas with the Mayweather style, you see how Mayweather fights. Sometimes he's in the Philly shell. Other times he puts the peekaboo defense up. Sometimes he's up against the ropes. Sometimes he's in the middle of the ring popping a jab. Sometimes there's the pull counter. There's just more elements and more dimensions to the Mayweather style. And when a style is less rigid like that, it tends to be a little bit easier for different people to use. Yeah. Whereas when a style is very rigid, it becomes very specific to a particular type of fighter with a particular set of attributes. Yeah. So anyway, this video has gone on long enough. Hopefully you guys have got something from it. Shout out to everybody, all my subs. It's happening. I'm out.